to another Coach Dave Academy lap guide with myself, Kieran Harrison. This week is week 7 and we are at the Nurburgring combined layout. I think it's the longest version available. Uses the full GP circuit and then obviously the Nordschliefe. And once again we're in the BMW M4 GT3. So without further ado, let's get started. So that was the full speed lap around the Nurburgring combined layout. We're here just at the start-finish line, just about to start, so I can run you through all the driving lines and braking points as we go. So getting started here on the pit straight of the GP circuit. Because we're coming off the Nordschliefe, we've got quite a lot of speed coming down into turn 1. So my braking reference is pretty much the 150 board. I think yeah, you can see there, I'm just starting to come off the throttle and get on the brakes as we're going past the 150. So it'll be out of your line of sight by that point. So it feels like it's just after. We're braking all the way down to first gear for this one. I think we only use first gear a couple of times on the lap. And this is one of them. You want to get in, make sure you get some of this curb. The camber really helps you if you get tight compared to if you run wide, aside from the obvious benefit of running a tighter line. And then it really compresses the car so that you get it turned, and you can see I get on the power suddenly and quite aggressively, but not quite full throttle. Then we're just getting on the power quite quickly and moving over to the right to some extent. I don't get all the way over to the far right, it's more like just right at the middle before we come off the power and onto the brakes again. Staying in second for this part, and then just again getting on the power as early as we can. And then I don't really have a reference for this one. It's more, you can see I'm just turning away from this outside curve. I'm sort of pointing the car in towards somewhere near the apex before I start to brake. You can see I'm braking now. I'm just having to judge my distance off the distance to the corner. So it's just something you're gonna have to get used to. Just practice it, and you'll get used to it. Luckily, it's on the GP layout, so you could, if you needed to speed it up, practice just the GP layout. But we're trail braking all the way down here. Do use first for this one as well, and you want to stay as tight as you can on this apex the whole way around. As you can see, we're really hugging it towards the exit, and we stay quite left to open up the right because we've got a decent run towards the next corner after this one, so we want to maximize the exit. You can take quite a bit this curb, but I think if you get your left wheels over the white line and onto the curb, there's an off track there. So just be wary of that. And it's the same sort of story on the exit. If you go off over this sort of astroturfy bit, the darker green patch, you do get an off track. But you can run as wide as you like as soon as you get towards this lighter green bit and then the runoff. And as long as you get back on before this dark green patch, you can see my right wheels are well on the road. And then for this layout, we're carrying on for the full GP loop. So my reference for this one is the end of this road that goes off onto the other layout that'll cut through. So you can see I'm just starting to brake here just as the front's coming into line with the end of that escape road. Down one gear to third for this part, trail braking down here just to try and get it turned as best I can. Then briefly back onto the power and coming left a little bit again, sort of mid-left of the road. I don't find it being worth it to get all the way to the left because you would have to compromise your speed in the previous corner too much to make it worth it. So I'm just coming across, opening it up a little bit and braking down to second gear for this one. Again, trail braking, trying to stay tight to the apex as long as we can. And then you can see aggressively picking up the power once we're starting to get pointed towards the exit. I find with this one, as much as you can use all of this up to the gravel without it being an off track, if you hit it at too steep of an angle, the curb, because it's quite raised, it can pull the car off too quickly. So you kind of want to hit it at a bit more of a shallow angle, and that ends up resulting in you not using quite all of it. So as long as you're leaving two wheels on the road, it's about right, somewhere like that. And then heading down here, my reference is this. You can see this little escape roady bit, but then the following bit, where there's a bit of grey sort of concrete on the left side, that's pretty much where I'm braking, and I'm going to use some of it as well to widen the corner. So you can see I'm coming off the accelerator, getting on the brake, down all the way from fifth to second for this one, and I'm running sort of out to the middle. The way I'm viewing this corner is it's almost a double apex corner. You don't want to hit the first, but you can see you're making it into more of a V than the U. That's just to help in this car, just to help get the best traction possible on the exit. So you can see I get a minimum speed in the middle of the corner, and then we're really holding it before getting on the power until I know that I'm going to be able to make the second apex on the curb. You can see there I'm able to get on the power quite hard because I'm pointing it. By the time I'm getting on the power, I'm already pointed towards the exit as much as I can. And the camber does help you in this one as well. There's a little bit of nice camber to help you get the traction. Again, using some of this curb, but you don't need to use all of it. The traction is more important than using the full width. For these ones, it's actually quite tricky in this car. more than some cars where you could maybe do it flat. This one I'm using the curb on the right, and we just have a bit of a lift. You can see roughly to halfway for a while. Nibbling at the left curb. I think it pushes you out of the corner too much if you get any more than just the red and white parts. Certainly with this car, and then getting back on the power as soon as we can. Make sure now, use all of this, but don't touch the gravel because you lose a lot of speed just momentarily touching the gravel nowadays. Then coming up to this bit, again, I'm looking at this 100 board, but I'm braking possibly halfway between, or just as we come off this geo block stuff here onto the concrete bit. We're coming off the power and starting to brake. So for this one, down to third gear, you can take all of this inside. As you can see here, I just take the red and white just to not upset the car. And again, you can take the exit, but because it's a steep curb, that's kind of the theme with this track. The steep curbs are not usually that helpful. They're more helpful on the GP than they are on the Nordschleife, that's for sure. But still here, I don't use that one, just to try and get back across the left-hand side as quick as we can. I do use the full width here to open up this one, because then obviously we go onto the old DRS straight from the Formula 1 layout. I think just staying in third through this part and sort of trail braking in, lifting for a bit, just a little bit of brake to get it turned in, and then we're just coasting a bit. Then we get on the power. Again, don't take too much inside curb, but get right up to it. Use all the exit you can. Again, it's key not to hit the gravel. It would be better to leave a little bit on the table than it is to hit the gravel, because it really kills your exit speed. And especially because this goes onto a straight, that will really kill the lap time. For this is the fast chicane we use on this layout, as opposed to the full F1 GP chicane. So I'm starting to brake roughly halfway between the 100 board and the 50 board. It feels subjectively like we're more closer to the 50 board. I think that's just because of the speed. So you can see I'm still shy of the 50 board, and I'm fully on the brakes now. Down from 5th to 3rd for this one. And the key with this chicane really is to cut it as much as the game allows. You can see here I take quite a lot of curb, but just the edge of my right wheel is still on the tarmac and rather than the white line. This one again, you can go over it, and I think as long as your left wheels are left side of the curb, the red and white bit of the curb, you avoid the off track. And it just allows you to take so much more speed if you take as much of the track limits as it allows. And you can see here, because I'm carrying more speed, I end up taking this big curb on the exit. The key now with this part is to get off it before I start to brake. So you can see I pretty much brake as soon as I'm down off it. And I move over to the right, just in the middle of the track, and sort of trail brake through into the Nordschleife. This time I don't quite make the apex, but it doesn't matter too much as long as you get a good exit. It's sort of a weird off-camber corner anyway. So having to be quite careful on the power on the exit. You can see I'm just sort of delaying, going to full throttle just to make sure I get the traction. And then running all the way out to this wall. And what I like to do is, just as the wall ends, I'm pointing the car slightly to the right and starting to brake, pretty much as you go past the end of this wall. So I only use a slight bit of this track, because you don't want to really increase the angle you have to turn into the corner by too much. So I'm just moving slightly across just to widen it as much as I can without compromising and making the track too much longer. We get right into the curb, but don't touch it, and then onto the power. And again, don't touch the exit curve if you can avoid it. Then moving across the left-hand side. This one is usually flat. I have a little lift here on this lap, but you should be okay to do it flat, especially once the tyres are fully up to temperature. And then for this following part, I'm moving across the right-hand side, and just as we get to the right-hand side of the track, I'm coming onto the brakes. I go down to 4th for the first part, and then 3rd now as I'm braking into the right-hand part. And again, with both of these, right up to the curbs, but don't use them. Just gradually getting on the power, using as much of the track as there is available, and then quickly getting back across the right as much as I can to try and open up this next little S's sequence. I take quite a lot of this curb. Just in this case, it helps to open up the next part, and it's the same all through this little sequence. So you can see I take a bit of the curb there to help me get to the left-hand side for the right, and then I take all of this curb. You've got to be careful not to take any more than this, because there is an off-track just if you touch your right-hand wheels on the grass just behind this bit of curb. I'm not sure if you can tell on your screen, but there's a bit of geo-block bit here, and I'm pretty much on the edge of it. And then you've just got to be careful. You can see I've got basically no input just after I come off the curb. And in fact, as I go over the curb, I'm got almost no input And that's just to try and let the car roll through instead of overloading it, because this is quite a lot of curb for this kind of car to take. And you can see there's a bit of a bump, and then you go over the crest and it sort of cambers into the next left-hander. Just nibble the curb here, and eventually get back on the power. It feels like it just wants to understeer through this whole section, using a little bit of this exit curb, and then straight back over to the left. And pretty much as we're getting over to the left-hand side, we're back on the brakes. Third through this whole section. Stay third for this one as well. And again, I'm using the curb here. As much as it unsettles the car, in this case, it's worth using it to open up the following corner. So as long as you're careful on the throttle, you can see I'm still not full throttle until, and then a little bit more of a lift as the car bounces, and then we go full throttle once it settles again. And that left hand has got enough of a positive camber to help you go through flat and it grips. Then we come up to this fast right-hander, and in this car, at least the setup that I'm running with low wing, it's not flat. So you can see it's a bit of a lift down to about 25-30% as I hit the first apex, and then back to full throttle as soon as possible and using the full amount. You don't need to get fully into this second apex, just as long as you can stay on the track without scrubbing too much with your steering angle. And then this is a big flat out section down the hill, and we come into this fast left, which is again not quite flat out. So I'm just lifting. I don't think I brake, just lifting, and then back to full throttle. It's basically as you go over the crest, you're lifting a lot, and then once you're down off the crest, you go hard on the power again. Just trying to keep it somewhat to the left-hand side. I'm most of the way to the left-hand side here. And my reference for this part is the change in tarmac. If you can see, there's like darker tarmac goes to the lighter tarmac. So I'm pretty much braking both as I straighten the car. This is pretty much the point that I'm pointing in a straight line towards the outside of the track. And just before this change in tarmac. All the way down from 6th to 3rd for this one. This curb is definitely one that you don't want to hit, especially in this car, because it upsets the traction so much. So as you can see, I'm just staying slightly away from it and then waiting to get on the power. You can take a little bit of this exit curb, but be careful not to hit it too sharply, because it's so steep. If you hit it at a certain angle, it pulls the car off and you end up getting an off track before you can get back on. Then flat out down the hill, all flat through this section, and there's a compression at the bottom of the hill, and we're moving across to the right hand side, and just as we get to the curb, so just sort of car length or two before this sign on the right hand side, I'm starting to brake. For the first part, I'm just down to 5th, take some inside curb to open up the following corner. I think that's kind of a theme here, is the only time I'm using curbs is when it's worth it to open up the next corner, and when traction doesn't matter on the way out, because that's what it upsets the most. But because we're on the brakes here, the traction doesn't matter. And braking in a straight line for as long as I can in between the two corners, all the way down to 3rd from 5th for this second part. And then briefly back on the power, you can see there, I get the apex, and once I know it's turning enough, I'm getting back on the power briefly, and then moving slightly out to the right. We don't get all the way over to the left here, and back on the brakes, down to 2nd gear, to make sure we hit this second late apex in this left-hander, and then sticking as much as we can to the left to open up the right. Now, I find for this one, again, it's important not to take too much of this. I take a little bit of it. I think it would be even more ideal if you don't hit it at all. But I find you can put in more steering lock than feels natural here. It's almost like the fronts have more grip than it feels like they should have. So you can see I'm 90-degree steering lock on this one, and it's fine. It takes a bit of getting used to. I do use some of this exit curb. As long as you don't use too much, you can get back on the track before you would run out of curb and onto the grass. Then just flat through this bit and staying over to the right hand side. And just this one I'm braking a bit. Stay in 5th gear though. Again, just get right over the curb without touching it, and then move over to the right hand side as the car naturally wants to anyway. And then my reference here, you can see where this geoblock bit ends, pretty much as the front gets into line with that. So about now, I'm coming off the brakes off the throttle onto the brakes, down to 3rd for this one. And again, don't hit this inside curb, and then get on the power as soon as you can, because the speed of this corner is sort of in between 2nd and 3rd. I prefer 3rd, just because it makes the traction so much easier for the next part, because you're turning and accelerating quite a lot. You can get on the power hard in 3rd gear, or 2nd you have to be more careful, and then you're changing gear quickly anyway. So you can see I'm pretty much back to full throttle very quickly. And just a tiny lift through this right before we come into this downhill slower right. So we go over this crest here, and then just as you feel the car load again as it comes off the crest, that's when I'm getting off the power and onto the brake. Just down 1 gear to second for this one, and you want to miss that first apex, as you can see here, just a little bit, but hit the second, and then carry some speed out onto this exit curb. Moving over to the right, you don't need to move all the way over. The more important part is to make sure you get into the apex in time, because I think it's a bit off camber on the way in, so it doesn't behave quite how you might expect. As long as you get into this apex, it really compresses the car and you can get it turned through. It might not feel like you're going to make it, but it is flat if you get into the apex at least. Then we hit the second apex, bouncing around all the way through, then straight back over to the left-hand side. Just as we're getting there, I don't really have a specific brake marker board, but just as we're getting to the left side of the circuit here, I'm coming off the throttle and getting on the brake again. I think we're in 4th gear through this section, and I stay in 4th gear for the following right. This is a bit of a triple right, a triple apex right-hander, and it's one of the more tricky corners to get right. So you want to hit the first apex, pretty much hitting it here. Hit the second, but miss the third because you want to be washing out wide, carrying the exit speed. You can see that I'm on the brakes, and then we go past the first, and as we get to the second apex, that's when I'm confident that the car's not going to understeer wide, and so I'm getting on the power really hard. Because we're in 4th gear and we're going quite fast, we've got quite a lot of grip, so we're able to hit the power hard. You can see I pretty much, once I know I'm going on the power, it's pretty much straight to full throttle. And I did have a few times while I was making the setup where I would feel like I was going to stay on, and I would end up understeering out wide, so it's just a case of getting used to how it feels when the car's going to make it through, or how far through the corner you are when you get to that point. And again, this is another tricky corner. Don't really have a specific reference, so I'm just, don't know, 5-10 car lengths away from this brake marker board ahead. Just braking from 4th all the way down to 1st, but you've got to be really careful on the brakes here. So I'm only braking to half here, and then as I turn in, I'm coming off it. It's a case of trying to trail brake without losing the rear as you're turning through the corners. I managed to keep it stable here, and then down to 1st. You want to hit both of these left-hand apexes. So I hit the first one, and then we hit the minimum speed in 1st gear just about now. Hit the second apex, and then back on the power. And as much as this doesn't apply with all other cars, with this GT3 in particular, you want to definitely avoid this right-hand curb. So it just really, it helps with the traction so much if you avoid it. So as much as I run wider here, because you can see from my throttle input that I was able to pick up the power quite hard and then stay pretty much nearly flat out. That's just from avoiding the curb. You get enough traction through there as long as you avoid the curb and don't upset the rear, you can get the traction. Then coming in again into this downhill left-hander, we want to go just before the end of this red and white curb. Excuse me. We're braking from 4th to 3rd, really trying to be gentle on the brakes. It's quite easy to overload the front here and understeer wide as you turn in. So you can see I'm pretty much off the brakes by the apex. Picking up the throttle. I use a little bit of this, but if you're going to use this outside curve, make sure you don't get up onto this flat part here, otherwise it pulls the car out wide and you'll struggle to get back in time for the following right-hander, so you would struggle to open it up sufficiently. So even here, I'm only just getting back across the left-hand side in time. And in this case, I'm 3rd all the way through here, and I stay in 3rd for the next right, and I'm using this left-hand curve just to open the corner up as much as possible. But you have got to bear in mind and get used to, if you're going to use this curve, that it adds an extra sort of bump to the car. So this is quite a bumpy section. It's quite hard to judge getting into the apex properly. It just takes a bit of practice getting used to how the bumping down off the curb affects the car and its turn in. So just braking gently because we're using the curb, and obviously the car's going to be bouncing around. We don't want to overload the tyres. Staying in 3rd through here, and you've got to be patient through here. As much as it feels like a compression, so you feel like you've got loads of grip, just after the compression, so about here, you go over a bit of a crest and it unloads the car, so then you lose rear and front grip. You start understeering and you lose traction. So you can see that I'm quite hard on the power at the first part of the apex, and then I come off the power a little bit, and then just being patient until I know that I can go flat again. Taking some exit curb just to widen the exit and carry a bit more speed, then flat through this part. Make sure you stay left after this flat left to open up the right. And this one, you've got a sign here on the right, this first sign. Just as we're going past that, I'm coming on the brakes, so you can't actually see that. There we go. Just there on the right side of the screen, and we're just coming off the power and getting on the brakes. So it feels when you're in the car like you've just gone past it by a couple of car lengths, because obviously it went out of your side window at this point. Down from 5th to 3rd for this one. This one I think this is probably the most difficult corner on the track to get right, and one of the most important, because you can see it's sort of a tightening corner. So we're not getting into the curb early. You want to get in for a late apex, but because of the bumps and stuff and the way the corner is, it's quite difficult to judge that. So you've just got to sort of run it in the middle of the track, make sure you're not going too fast, and then get the apex right at the end, picking up the power quite hard. The key here, because this is coming out under this big straight, you really want to prioritize the exit, and don't make the mistake of getting up on this curb too much, because you can see just ahead of the car it ends quite quick, and if you get up on the curb, it pulls the car, so it can be hard to get back on in time, and it really affects your traction, and you can also get off track if you end up on the grass and in the wall if you're not careful. So just try to really get the red and white part, but no more, and then flat out up through this hill section. I mean, it goes without saying, you just want to stick tight to the left hand side without too much steering input, so I sort of come away from it briefly, just a smooth line through. Just shortening this, it's not straight, but it's a flat section, so you want to shorten it as much as you can. Then here we're coming across, don't hit this left side, I'm just fading across to the right hand side here. And what I'm looking for here, you've got this sort of extra bit of tarmac here that you can use right up to the wall. So I'm using most of that, but not quite all of it. Because as you can see, I just about come back on the track before the end of the grass, or before the grass starts. If you were further out, you would probably end up cutting a bit of the grass and then you would lose grip. So just use maybe half of what's available there. And in this car, it's just a lift. Don't know, I do come briefly off the power altogether, and then just getting on the power progressively. I stay in 5th through here. It's just a case of I was getting a weird experience where it would feel like I had loads of grip at the apex and then suddenly lose it. You can see there, I build the power up and then I come off it again because I feel it start to understeer a bit more, and then I'm back on it again. It's just sort of fluctuating levels of grip in the tarmac that you kind of come across mid-corner. And then you want to use all of this sort of extra runoff that you've got here. That just helps you carry more speed through the corner, as long as you get back on before it ends, and you would be on the grass. Then we want to stay away from the left-hand side of this initially, but as you go over the crest, the road goes a little bit more left, so you basically want to almost apex this left side of the track as you go over the crest, and that just helps you open up this right-hander, which is flat. Just make sure you time the turn in right and don't hit the inside curb. Quickly coming back across the right hand side and then pointing the car left. So my aim here is to really almost apex that sticky out part of the curb there. And there's a crest here just before the curb. I'm making sure that I'm braking before that crest, so it's a couple of car lengths before the crest. It'd be more apparent when you're driving the track yourself, but you can see I go over it just now, and then it sort of compresses the car, and then you go over another bump. But for this one, we're all the way down to 2nd. We're hitting that first apex and then sort of unwinding the car through it. We don't feel the need to come back for a second apex. It's sort of like a widening radius corner as we go through. So we can actually get back on the power quite hard and run it all the way out to this outside curb. I take a little bit of it here, then just staying in the middle of the track. And again, just like one of the previous corners, I'm going to, at the last minute, point the car to the right. As you can see, the curb sort of turns right up there. That's the line that I want to be on. You can see I've turned myself towards it, and then I'm starting to brake. And again, with this one, going into the carousel, we've got the crest that you would go over just before you go, like, dip into the carousel itself. I'm sort of braking 2, 3, 4 car lengths before that. There's a bit of a dip that you find. It might be easier to demonstrate that from cockpit view. So you can see there's a dip here just over this side, and that's basically when I'm braking. So I go over a little crest just now as we go into the dip. I'm coming onto the brakes. Just braking down to 2nd gear. Don't want to enter the carousel on the far left. You want to drop into it quite late and get your 2 wheels down on this bottom part here. And the key here is just feathering the throttle. You really, really don't want to fall out of onto the top part because you lose so much grip from losing the camber of the corner. That can cost you half a second easily if you fall out halfway through. So just being patient on the throttle, consistent on it, just letting us ride through at a pretty consistent speed, and then as we come to the exit, building up the power. But don't go to full throttle just yet, because as you come out, it's effectively like going over quite a steep crest, so it momentarily unloads the car and you don't have any grip. So I think here it hits the traction control just briefly. But then as soon as it loads again, I'm going back to full throttle. Just to try and... You basically can't exit out of there with perfect traction, but as long as you full throttle, as soon as the car's loaded up again, you get a good exit. This left hand is flat, easily flat, so just don't worry about that one. And then for this part, just sort of following the right hand side of the track around, and just as we're coming up to this start of this red and white curve, I'm just coming off the throttle and onto the brakes, down one gear to fourth, and you want to hug this left hand side first apex, and then just be patient through here. You don't want to add on too much speed in between the two apexes, because you'll find yourself understeering on the second part. Make sure you don't hit the curbs either. As you can see here, seems to be quite common as well. You've got a bit of camber assistance as you're on the apex, but then you quickly go over a crest where the camber starts to work against you on the exit. So here I'm using some of this left-hand side curb just to open up the following right-hander. Down to third gear for this one. Make sure you brake quite early. Pretty much as soon as you get onto the curb, I'm coming off the power and starting to brake. Just braking quite gently to allow it to turn, because as you can see again, we go over a bit of a crest here and down the hill, so the car's quite unloaded. So you can see I've got basically no input here. I'm just trying not to overload the front tyres too early by braking, so I'm just coasting through momentarily. Then picking up the power as we get down to the apex as hard as we can. As soon as we can, taking a little bit of this curb, just because it allows us to move the car over to the left more quickly for this part. You can see here I'm sort of half lifting, maybe to 60%, then briefly back to the power. Just feathering it through this part and then braking. I stay in fourth through this left part. Don't take the first part of the curb because it bounces the car out too wide. But you do want to try and get a little bit of this next part, just to try and open up the following right. And then I take quite a bit of this one. In something like a TCR or a GT4, you could get away with taking more of this curb, but because this car is a lot stiffer, I find that it just bounces the car out wide too much. So I'm just taking a little bit, so maybe just onto this geoblock stuff behind the red and white curb. Then moving out onto this red and white curb on the exit, just widening the corner. And I do actually start to brake on that. So pretty much as we go into this little dip, as the car starts to load up as we go up the hill, I'm on the brakes again. Down to third. This is a bit of a weird one because you initially get loads of grip, but then as the car unloads from the compression, as you start to go over the top of the hill, you lose the grip quite quickly. So you've got to be... Basically, you want to turn in early while you've got the grip, get to this apex, avoid the curb again, just ride up to it. And then you've got to be quite patient on the power because the road falls away from you, and if you're not careful, you can either run wide or lose the rear on the power. So here I use some of this geoblock stuff, but then getting back across the right-hand side as quickly as we can. And then just as we're about to make it to the right-hand side, as we go over this graffiti, we're back on the brakes, down to third gear, take this first apex, wash out a little bit, and then hit the second apex just after the red and white curb ends. And that sets you up for the following corner, on the brakes again, just as we straighten the car out. And again, this one's really important to not hit the apex because of not hit the curb, sorry. Because of the way the track undulates here, it can be quite easy to get in too early, so you've got to be patient, because as you go over this crest, you lose grip, but then it compresses again, you get more grip, and you do find yourself getting into the apex. Careful not to run too wide here. I think if you go over the white line with your right wheels, you do get off track. I think that's probably one of the easiest places to off track on the whole Nordschleife. But staying two wheels on the curb before we brake, down to third for this one. The reason I don't use more of this curb is because, as you can see at the end here, it ends just as we're turning in. So if you were further over, as much as it would appear like you could widen the corner, you would end up putting two wheels on the grass, and obviously that doesn't help. Again, this is another one where the camber's really against you. You get quite good grip initially, but then as you go over the top of the hill, the car really washes out wide. So you can see from my throttle input how patient I'm having to be. I'm still not full throttle, and now we are as the road flattens out again. As we use a little bit of that exit curb. I'm staying in third through this whole bit. So I don't go up to fourth before this corner, and then I stay in third for the next one. So again, there's a bit of a compression here, and just as we're about to go up the hill, I'm starting to brake. Staying in third. And this one, you want to take quite a late apex because the road goes right again on the exit. So you've got to make sure that you can get a straight exit. So you can see, I don't turn in early. Do just about get down to the apex. You wouldn't want to hit this curb anyway, but you could be a little bit closer than I was here. They're quite hard on the power. Use all of this exit sort of curb runoff bit just to allow you to get on the power a bit earlier. And it washes out to the left. But this bit's easily flat, so you don't need to worry about how far left you are. And this one, I'm coming off the power and not really braking as we go over the dip because I don't want to. Basically, I don't want to overload the front when I land from the little bump bit. You can see my rears are in the air. I'm not sure if the fronts get in the air as well. But if you're braking too hard, it can overload the front when you land from that, and then you end up just washing out wide. So quite gently on the brakes, down to fourth gear. Hit this first apex, then run it wide. You don't need to get back for the second apex. As long as you are about this far away from the left-hand side, you can get enough grip really to go flat through the next part. So you can see you don't need to open up this left part any more than this. If you were a bit further left, you would probably have to lift, but this line you can get away with it. Make sure you don't hit this curb, but then just have the faith, go flat if you've opened up the corner sufficiently and use this geo-block exit. Then again, flat through here over the crest. What I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to avoid all the curbs through here. You can actually get away with taking this curb quite a lot. So if you find yourself running wide in this right-handed, you can just take some of this curb and you get away with it. But just trying to avoid them here. But it's easily flat through that section anyway. Then for this is quite a fast right-hander. What I'm looking for is this geo-block on the left here. It's just ending. So just after that ends, maybe 2 car lengths. 3 car lengths, I'm then coming off the brake and down to fourth. Again, this one's a late apex because your priority is not this corner, but to set up the next one. So I'm sort of getting down to the apex just as the curb's ending, and then straight back to the right as best I can. Down to third gear for this part. This is another one of them off-camber corners where you go over the top of a bit of a hill. You're just being patient on the exit while we wait for the grip to come to us. You can see I'm having to delay getting on the power. Take some of this exit curb, but make sure you get back on in time before you need to start braking for this sort of mini carousel. Then just before, or just as we get to this bit of graffiti here, I'm braking again, down to third. Then you want to get into this carousel. Get as close to this red and white curb as you can, so your right wheels are on the carousel bit. You can see here, I think ideally you would want to carry a little bit less speed and exit a bit further round. Because I'm carrying quite a lot of speed, I come out slightly early. Just about get away with it. But because of the way the car comes out, I had to momentarily lift off just to let it settle, and then back to full throttle as quickly as I could. Then back across the left-hand side. I put 2 wheels on this left-hand curb just to open it up as much as I can, because this gives you the run all the way on up to the massive straight, up to the start-finish straight again. So just a little bit of brake. I'm in fourth already, and I stay there. Make sure you avoid this curb, but get as close as you can to it. And then, as you can see here, I'm pushing it a little bit. I'm getting very close to the edge of the track, and for that reason, I then slightly miss this apex. It wasn't too bad, I suppose. But you want to be in just a little bit tighter to this red and white curb just to help you get the best run possible. And this is another one where it's such a long corner. You just kind of have to get used to how it feels when you're at a point where you can go flat out and not have to lift again. Because the last thing you want to do is get on the power too early and then have to lift or run wide into the grass. But so the key really is to get on the power as soon as you're comfortable. The car's going to grip. It does compress the car through the exit, so you get more grip than you might expect. And then it's just a case of flying up this massive straight. If this is the last lap and you were leading, you might be in trouble if anyone's within the draft of you. This is the main overtaking point on the circuit, really. And then still flat, all the way through here. And then really hugging this left-hand side to open up the right. And it's just to try and allow us to brake more in a straight line than if we hadn't set it up quite as much. So again, still flat as we enter the right. But just as we come out, we're immediately off the power. just after we come off the curb, and you can see there's a little bit of a change in tarmac here from grey to a sort of brownier colour. That's approximately where I'm braking. And you're coming all the way down from top gear here, from 6th all the way down to 2nd. And I think the key is you want to try and trail brake so you can keep turning and get it as far left as you can through this part. Just be aware that because there's a compression, you have to kind of come off the brakes a little bit to help it turn. And then, yeah, actually that's quite a good example of it. So you can see how hard I'm braking there. And as we come through this compression bit, we're coming off it and then hard on the brake again, just before we turn into the right. You can actually use more of this curve to open up the next part. I just didn't quite get as much as I would have liked. And then getting on the power as hard as we can. Don't hit this left-hand curve because, as I've said so many times, it just hurts the traction more than it's worth. You can see that I do get on the power quite hard and then pretty much tiny lift through the left, but then stay flat all the way. Just make sure you don't graze the wall on the exit. You wouldn't want to get a 0x and invalidate the lap. But yeah, that brings us back to the start-finish straight and to the finish line of the lap. So there we have it. That was the full lap guide for the BMW GT3 for the Nurburgring combined for week 7 of the IMSA iRacing series. The key thing, there's a couple of key things with this track. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but the number one thing is just keeping on top of the camber changes and the undulation changes, I suppose, through the whole lap, because it does affect a lot how the car behaves. And also just generally try to be careful of the curbs because they're pretty massive around the Nordschliefe in particular. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you need to know anything more about the services we provide at Coach Dave Academy, just check out the Discord of the website and you'll find everything you need there. That's it from me for now, so I'll see you in the next one.